Good morning and welcome. My name is Dan Mocanu and I'm your host for today's virtual workshop, Wayz4Change, the instrument for your changes ahead. I want to thank you for taking your time to explore a new perspective in designing change. This event becomes a workshop the moment you try on the new concepts and do the exercises during the self-reflection sections. Of course, after the workshop, you can replay it and do the work at your own leisure. For this, you'll need a few sheets of blank paper and a pen, or if you prefer to work digitally, you can download right now the workbook in either PDF or in PowerPoint right now. The intention of the workshop is to alter your relationship to change, to empower you to design and take on changes that are important to you in your personal and professional life, but that you are really committed to making them happen. The general flow of our conversation is first I introduce a concept, then I give you the opportunity to try it on. I will show you how I applied Wayz4Change in my personal life and in business. Thank you. I want to start by giving you a little bit of context of what Wayz4Change is and what it isn't. In the current context, yesterday's way of life no longer holds true today. The decision you make and more importantly how you make them will shape your future. And Wayz4Change will help you make viable changes you can easily put into practice, have a navigation system while going through the change, and make the right decisions from the start. Wayz4Change is a navigation system for change, but not the solution to change. To claim that it would be an insult to your intelligence. Many of you want the answer to your change. With Wayz4Change, you can find the answer on your own. It doesn't give you automatic routes like Waze or Google Maps. Instead, it helps you find your own route by using the assets and resources you already have and by making irrelevant the difficulties. It will help you make the changes you want your way, not the right, should, or must way or someone else's way. If you want to lose weight, Wayz4Change doesn't tell you how, it won't prescribe you the magic diet, but it will help you create your own weight loss strategy. Think of it as your own design studio for change, where you are the architect-in-chief for your change. You know best what works for you and what doesn't, what you can take on and what you cannot. With Wayz4Change, you will be able to formulate the map and the pathway for your change, and when in action, it will become your GPS. In the past 2 months, with this tool, I redefined my consulting and coaching practice and my lifestyle, my relationship to food and sleep. I will show you what and how in this workshop. The key intentions of the workshop are, first, to redefine your approach to change and decision-making in any circumstances. Second, to see how to design easy-to-implement changes. This workshop is the first step. After the workshop, you'll receive all relevant materials and information to develop the embryos of your changes with Wayz4Change. I also created the Wayz4Change group on LinkedIn to help you bring Wayz4Change in your life, and of course, you can always send me your questions via email. Now let's get to work. Here is how the workshop will go. First, we start with welcome and context. Then I will introduce to you Wayz4Change. You will see how I applied Wayz4Change in my personal life. Then we will have the first Q&A section. After Q&A, I will show you how I applied Wayz4Change in my business. Then we will have another Q&A section, and after that you will have the opportunity to take Wayz4Change for a short spin in your life. Afterwards, I will answer your questions in the final Q&A section, and finally we will enter the final stage of the workshop with some key conclusions and remarks and end the workshop. How do we make changes? Why do we make some changes and not others? Certainly, external factors can play a decisive role in the success of any change, just like now. But even in extraordinary circumstances, what can we do? Is there, if anything, still up to us? What would it be like to be able to come up with viable routes fast, like Waze or Google the map and route masters that take us from point A to point B? The familiar ways to making decisions is to weigh in the pros and the cons of change. But even this approach doesn't increase massively the odds to making a change. Just look around in your life and the life of others. What if we shift from looking at pros to looking at the value it brings to us and to others, and from cons to difficulties we or the environment encounter while making changes happen? And how could we counteract these interferences, make them irrelevant? This is an open inquiry throughout the workshop and beyond. It is implicit and perhaps obvious that Google and Waze share 5 key elements that allow for fast and reliable direction giving: the starting and the end points, the map, the route, and the GPS. Without any of this, there is no predictable and reliable travel strategy. Any change needs a similar system to clearly define the starting and arrival points as real and attainable, the route or plan of intermediate achievements, and the position and heading in real time given by the actions that ultimately lead to the realization of any strategy. The only winning option is when all these components exist and are fully defined. Any other scenario will not lead to change. So far, nothing new. And yet, knowing this, why do most change initiatives still fail? The chance to have the winning strategy is of only 1 in 32 with 31 in 32 chances to fail. Where are these numbers from? It takes a little bit of math and quantum mechanics to see how I came up with these numbers. I will share this with you very quickly. First, the quantum mechanics part. If there are 5 key conditions for change, each with 2 states, with 1, the on state, it exists and is fully defined, and 0, the off state, is not in existence or is incomplete, there are 32 total possibilities, or 2 to the 5th. The only viable possibility is when all 5 factors exist and are fully defined. In this case, there is only one condition of satisfaction when all 5 factors are ones out of the 32 possibilities. The rest most likely will not happen. By the way, you can take on the quantum mechanics way of thinking anywhere you want to find the odds for a favorable outcome of finite number of states for a given situation. If love is a function of key factors like phone calls and texts, flowers, sex, conversation, body, job, money, etc., you can get the odds of having the perfect love. In this case, of 7 factors, each having 2 states, there are 2 to the 7th, or 128 possibilities, of which the minimum acceptable ones are, well, you know, the ones you and I settle for. What would it be like to see at a glance the map, the start and end points, the routes, and the GPS of your change? Stay tuned. That is exactly what we will develop here. I will share with you my work with Wayz4Change on 2 situations, one in my personal life and the other in my business. Can change be simple? Change looks complex and messy, but there is one simple truth about it. Any change happens between 2 poles, purpose and cost. The pole purpose is about the value of the change, the why and the what, and the pole cost is about the how. If purpose scores higher than the cost, the change is likely to happen. If cost scores higher than purpose, the change has minimal or no chance to happen. The success of any change is given by the interplay between purpose and cost. And purpose and cost is an intimate affair. They are unique to each individual and groups of individuals. Only 4% of those who have gone through a heart attack change their lifestyle. Purpose is about utility and the value of the change, and cost is about effort, resources, time, and money. At the red pole is the cost area of inner and outer interferences, barriers, and obstacles, of pains and difficulties, and of expensive resources. At the blue pole is the area of purpose, of value, and utility of change. A short comment on the choice of colors. The Wayz4Change approach is not about good and bad. Red is bad and blue is good. The colors only indicate that red is about costs and blue is about value, utility, and purpose of change. You can't have one without the other. They are like a coin with 2 sides. One side shows value, the other the maker or the owner. More precisely, when the value is high and the cost is high, just as it is now in the COVID context, we are forced to go digital. A high cost for change in time, resources, and money, but with high value, with the potential to increase reach exponentially and to create value at low cost. Those who make the change will survive. Those who remain in their old ways will have a tough time or will be lost. When both value and cost are low, the change will likely not happen, because other high value and low cost changes will be more important to make. Think changing the logo color versus designing strategy. When the pressure of the cost is greater than the purpose of value of change, most likely the change will not occur. Like investing in offline versus online, or investing in low competitive advantage products and services, or in marketing and PR versus value design, or in complex features with low utility. When the purpose is much higher than the cost to achieve it, it is likely that the change will be made. Like investing in major changes with little effort, like lifestyle, or go from complex to simple, or from far away to near, or from moving from offline to online. Our challenge is to create the kind of changes and the kind of decisions that will lead to value-driven changes versus cost-driven changes. We have established the two poles now. We dig deeper to break down purpose and cost into their key components and create the map of change. Once purpose and cost are clear, the pathways and action plans emerge naturally. Okay, what about purpose and cost? What else is there? We will express the purpose and cost of change from the perspective of 4 cardinal points: eliminate and reduce to pole cost, and raise and create to pole purpose. At the cost pole, the cardinal point eliminate is about what becomes irrelevant with the change. What do we leave behind or give up or put a stop to? What barriers, interferences, obstacles, pains, inconveniences will be eliminated. The cardinal point reduce is about what matters less. What should we invest less in? What should we reduce? At the purpose pole is the cardinal point raise, which is about what matters more, what is worth investing in more. And at the cardinal point create, this point is about what is the purpose of change? What does it solve? What new benefits? What value does it bring about? What new opportunities does it create? What is tomorrow possible that was impossible today? These fundamental questions lead to the formation of embryos of any change map, route, and action plan. These questions are generally not asked, they are considered somewhat implicit, commonsensical, and most often are left unanswered. We'll see this applied in 2 scenarios, one in my personal life, the other in my professional life. Imagine that this map is made of metal and that it rests in its center point. Is the strategy balanced? We see that equilibrium can be achieved when either diagonals are developed, the eliminate and create one, or the reduce and raise diagonals, or when all 4 quadrants are developed evenly. Otherwise, the strategy is out of balance and the chances to being realized are significantly reduced. Often, if we were to map any change on Wayz4Change, we will see that most strategies are not balanced to begin with very little if any real chance to happen. Bringing back quantum mechanics, there are 4 key factors, each with 2 states, so there are 16 possible types of maps, but only 3 are viable or balanced. Therefore, the odds to having a balanced strategy is 3 in 16 or 19%. Most often the strategies either they raise or invest more in something or reduce or invest less in something, like raise the number of features or the selection or lower the costs. It's an either or. That is why most change strategies are doomed from the start. What you put in each quadrant becomes your map for change or your change strategy. Thus, in the COVID-19 context, at the cost pole, the cardinal point eliminate. What becomes irrelevant is eliminated or is put a stop to. At the purpose pole, at the cardinal point create. What needs to be redefined, created, and or started. What new opportunities arise, what new possibilities emerge. At the cost pole, at the cardinal point reduce, what becomes less important, what needs to be reduced or invest less energy, time, money, and or resources in. At the purpose pole, at the cardinal point raise, what becomes more important, what needs to be raised way above the past, in what to invest a lot more energy, time, money, and resources. Here is what the map of change in my personal life imposed by the COVID-19 context looks like. At the cardinal point eliminate, I put the usual way of socializing in person and eating out. As a result of the elements I put in the eliminate quadrant, I populated the other quadrants as follows. At reduce, I put eat less and less frequently, one meal 3-4 times a day. At raise, I put eat more fruits and vegetables, then sleep longer and better, minimum 6.5 hours, go to bed at midnight and get up at 7:30 in the morning. And finally, I put more time at home with myself. At create, I put redefine my relationship to food and getting fed and redefine my day-to-day living routine. So far, everything may seem simple and obvious, but to ensure that each element will be achieved to make the transition from objective to action, there is still work to do ahead. Further, I applied Wayz4Change recursively on one key point from my map. Redefine my relationship to food in create. I chose this point because for 30+ years I have not cooked for myself. I ate well, but out at restaurants or takeout, or had my kitchen victims, those close to me, cook for me. I have a modern, well-tooled kitchen that inspires visitors to cook. It's just a trap. In reality, I use the kitchen only to make Nespresso. How did I come up with my strategy? The key place to start was to see what were the obstacles in my way to preparing and cooking my own food. What kept me away from my kitchen, what I do not like or even hate about doing in the kitchen. All these questions are about eliminate at the cost pole. And that purpose I put to create or redefine my relationship with food. How to become autonomous to prepare and cook my own food with no more than 5 minutes of my time in the process and not take more than 30-35 minutes to prepare the most sophisticated dish. With this in place, at reduce, I put the total cost of food, preparation and cooking time, menu complexity and cooking process, and portioning and eating frequency, eat less and less frequently. And at raise, I put the investment in push-button cooking appliances, then variety of menus, salads, soups, cooked food, juices and smoothies, and include more fruits and vegetables in the daily food intake. And finally, fun and satisfaction that I can feed myself and become independent. At create, I put autonomy through push-button cooking with a steamer for the sophisticated meals, an easy soup for 20-minute soup like grandma's, a cold-press juicer for raw fruit and vegetable juices, a blender for smoothies, and a slicer dicer for instant chopping and 5-minute salads. And the big finale, the French fries machine maker with zero oil for the former guilty pleasures at the movies. With this, I dropped 9 kilograms from 91 to 82 in 2 months, and the fat percentage dropped from 29.5 to 23%, and now my BMI index entered the normal area. Again, what we put in the 4 quadrants is not good or bad. The fact that I increased the initial investment in push-button cooking appliances may look bad, but the investment helped me become autonomous and save a lot of money in the long run. And yes, it is in the red area at the cost. What made this change possible were ease, simplicity, and the unsophisticated level of the recipes with basic and healthy ingredients. Here we have a few of the never-before-seen menus out of my push-button cooking and kitchen. Let's catch our breath a little and see what we have done so far. We established that any change happens between 2 poles, purpose and cost, and define the 4 cardinal points, eliminate and reduce the interferences, costs and barriers to change, and raise and create new purpose and value for the change. I started with general changes in life and mapped them out in the first run of Wayz4Change. Then I picked one essential objective and recursively I applied Wayz4Change to it. In 3 passes, you can get at clear, actionable objectives, even actions. The point here is not to go nuts with recursion, but to do the mental exercise until your change objective and its objectives are crystal clear and actionable. This is it. This is the secret. And another thing is that you don't have to make the changes that worked for others that might not work for you, but rather innovate in making the changes as you are with what you already have. Make changes your way. What does it look like to apply Wayz4Change in business? As promised, I will now show you how I applied Wayz4Change in my consulting and coaching practice. A little bit of context about strategic decision making. Those who make the strategic decisions shape the future. The viability and prosperity of an organization or company depends on how decisions are made. The value cost model can be applied in any strategic context where there is a need to have a map of the strategic objectives, the routes as the action plans, and the GPS as performance management systems to show performers if they are on the right path and course of action or not. Wayz4Change can be used in strategy meetings and team building events at any management level. With this approach can be resolved deeply rooted conflicts. Individual performance and development plans can be greatly simplified to focus only on what matters and disregard the rest. A key utility of the concept is to reduce complexity, to eliminate the ballast of unimportant details, to sharpen the focus on what really matters, and last but not least, to create responsible autonomy. Where did I start? I asked myself the same key questions in the business context of COVID-19. At Eliminate, what becomes irrelevant I need to eliminate or put a stop to it. At Reduce, what becomes less important, where do I need to reduce the investment of energy, time, money, and resources? At Raise, what becomes more important, what do I need to raise, where is it necessary to invest a lot more energy, time, money, and resources? At Create, what do I need to redefine, create, or start? What new opportunities and possibilities can I create? What does a map look like? At Eliminate, meetings in person and at work at the office, bureaucracy and unnecessary travel, and the paper. At Reduce, duration of the working day, number of office meetings, interruptions, duration of meetings, and revenue and number of active customers. At Raise, activity costs, productivity, and time for strategy. At Create, going digital and online, redefine leadership and management, and redefine strategy, the offerings, and the business model. Of course, your map will reflect your own strategic move in the COVID-19 context. What does it take to go digital, online, and virtual? How can this be achieved at a low total cost, effort, and resources with little or no disruptions and fast? This change is also directly affected by the pole's value and cost between what buyers buy and at what total cost. Between these two poles lies what we call in Blue Ocean strategy the buyer experience cycle, the customer journey from purchase, delivery, and use until the end of the life cycle of the product or service. At each stage, there are opportunities to grow and create a leap in value, to create new utilities, and to eliminate and reduce unnecessary pains or non-essential functionalities for users. Digitalization plays an essential role in all stages of the experience cycle, including in the delivery stage, where it complements value production. Just like putting new crowns on teeth cannot be democratized to do it yourself, because it is a process of art and science that requires the presence and skill of a dentist. In my case, my dentist went digital on the long and unpleasant traditional process of taking teeth impressions with some kind of plaster, by using instead a digital teeth scanner. With this innovation, he eliminated the intermediate visit for fitting the provisional crown and reduced the fitting time of the final new crown to only a few minutes because the fit was perfect. He took the impressions in few minutes and made perfect crown the same day. It is 4% more expensive but totally worth it. When there is genuine utility, the price becomes irrelevant. There are many things that apparently can only be done by hand or in the presence of the specialist. But what if this is not true? Still, before a patient goes on the chair and after he/she leaves, all stages of the customer journey can be digitalized. Fine. What about Dan's business? How did I go digital, online, and virtual? In my case, I digitalized and partially automated all the stages of the buyer experience cycle for my services. I have redefined my products and services and my portfolio, including the delivery in my consulting, facilitation, and coaching practice. At the purchase stage, I digitalized the search and selection with a dynamic website, the offering and contracting with automated and personalized proposals and contracts, the online purchase of hourly services and open program seats, and I fully automated my scheduling by taking into account my availability, appointment type, and real-time integrations with my calendar and with other tools. I digitalized content production with applications studio-like to design and deliver facilitation, consulting, and coaching content. At the delivery stage, I digitalized my events and workshops, including my consulting and coaching. I use virtual mass distribution for content and process like the one I'm using right now to deliver and reach simultaneously a large number of people. I also digitalized the implementation management at a distance with collaborative tools and applications for project management, content creation, and archiving. To achieve the objectives of each stage in the customer journey, there are a number of so-called supplements or obligatory components that allow the users to actually use the product or service. Take your case now. If you didn't have access to the internet or didn't have a smartphone or a smart device, a browser, and if you didn't know how to operate an email, you wouldn't be here or couldn't use Webinar Jam to be on this call. One needs to think of supplements that must be present and available to users in order to use a product or service. You buy a sophisticated and long-awaited remote for your gadgets in the house, and it comes without a battery. This is a supplement issue for the manufacturer, who may think it is not his or her job to provide batteries with their remotes. Such supplements are essential, and I cannot emphasize enough the importance of supplements for collaboration, project management, content production, delivery, archiving, security and confidentiality, and content sharing. And finally, I digitalized the support and maintenance stage through remote mentoring, coaching, supervision, and consulting. What was my strategic move? Well, here it is. I made irrelevant the event organizer, the facilitator and entertainer, and also made irrelevant the secretarial work and contact management during facilitation. I made irrelevant the indispensable expert as the knowledge distributor, and also made irrelevant the consulting jargon. And finally, I eliminated client costs related to facilities for the delivery of coaching and/or consulting. I reduced the complexity and difficulty of concepts and processes, the duration of the interventions, the time to result, and reduced the cost per program per day, and finally the overall price of the initiative. I raised the investments in equipment, software, and my own education, and on my role as a coach and mentor. I raised the fun factor for me and my clients, and also the autonomous working time of clients, and raised client engagement. I also raised the flexibility in delivery through on-demand interventions and the adherence to consulting through tools that clients can use in-house. As a result, I raised the impact and results of the projects and the return on investment per project. And finally, I raised the fees per time put in real time with me. I created the virtual expert as the knowledge transfer process architect. I created the digital studio for the design of virtual products and services. I gave a start to gamification and virtual tools, and I also gave a start to customer autonomy. Here are some of the software applications I use in the new context for collaboration, content production, and online retail. And this is what my new audio-video studio looks like. Let's review briefly the process I showed you so far. First, I started with a variety of business objectives, more or less specific, and I mapped them out with Wayz4Change in what I call the first pass. Then I chose an essential business objective and asked myself key questions regarding the value that buyers buy and the total cost at which I offer this value, by asking and answering the what and the how questions. This step is brilliantly created and developed in Blue Ocean Strategy by Professors Kim and Moborn from INSEAD. The buyer utility cycle is a key pillar for value innovation at low cost by eliminating and reducing the pains and useless and costly features, and by raising and creating a leap in value at every stage in the buyer experience cycle. I brought buyer experience cycle in this conversation to open you up as to what it takes to improve on what matters and reduce and eliminate what is irrelevant and costly. To really create a new offering or a new product from scratch, you need to go through the full value innovation process. There are no shortcuts. Blue Ocean Strategy is the best at this. After parsing through the buyer experience cycle, one can map the conclusions in the second pass of Wayz4Change. Hopefully, going through the second pass helps create crisp and clear actionable objectives that puts people in action naturally. If not, going through another pass with each item from the previous pass is necessary until it does. If you do your homework, you could in 2 passes formulate your map for change, crisp enough to move you into action. Now it's your turn. You'll have the opportunity to apply Wayz4Change to your objective. The activities in this workshop are intended to get you started, to go from 0 to 1 and not from 0 to 100, to get your PhD in change and in Wayz4Change. You can deepen your mastery in this concept by watching the replay of the workshop and by doing your own exploration. For this activity, you'll need a blank map. For those of you who prefer the digital format, you can download your workbook from the Files section on your screen and can choose between a PDF or an editable PowerPoint. For those of you using blank sheets of paper and pen, you have a couple more steps to go through. Take a blank sheet and cross it over in halves as shown and write down eliminate, reduce, raise, and create. Once you have this done, you are ready to go. How do we start? The first step is to formulate an objective, and the second step is to sketch a map of the change that will lead to the achievement of the objective. We will now focus on step 1. Look at the changes that you want to make with a what and a why not necessarily very clearly formulated, and put a Twitter version of the objectives in each corresponding quadrant. If you want to start or have something happen that is not happening right now or that is missing, this objective goes to create. If you want to put a stop to something or quit or leave behind, this objective goes to eliminate. If you want more of something, the objective goes to raise, and if you want less of something, the objective goes to reduce. After you put your objectives in their quadrant, choose only one objective with which you want to work on this workshop. Please take 2 minutes to put your change objectives in their proper quadrants. Please do this now. We are now entering step number 2. Here you have the opportunity to formulate your objectives crisper and closer to action. Now that you chose an objective, we will do a little bit of work on it to make it as crisp as possible and formulate it in the shortest, Twitter-like version to make clear what the change is about and what it would take to accomplish it. If you look at your objectives, you may notice that they fall into 2 categories. Some of them are quantitative, while others are qualitative. If your objective is quantitative, it is the answer to the question how much and by when. For example, I want a 20% increase in profit in the next 6 months, or lose 10 pounds in 2 months, or start sleeping 7 hours a night beginning tonight. If your objective is qualitative, it is the answer to the question, what does it look like when my objective is realized? For example, I want to bring more joy into my life, or I want to raise the performance and accountability in my firm. The hard part for both kinds of objectives is to imagine what the result being fulfilled looks like in its environment systemically and not how you will get it done. There is an addiction to focus on action because it is easy to visualize and quick, and it is filled with adrenaline. The cost is to miss out on some essential systemic force or dynamics and put yourself on the wrong path. Over 90% of change initiatives fail worldwide. Why? because they get into action and miss something out that is essential to the change. Imagine a super powerful and super fast fighter jet that travels with supersonic speeds, and all of a sudden its GPS stops working properly or at all and has no way to get its location and direction. This is what let's do it, let's get on with it without having a GPS and ultimately a strategy looks like. All failed change strategies have something in common. Can you guess what? Most likely one or more of the 5 key factors for viable changes is missing altogether or is incomplete. For instance, what would it look like to bring more joy in my life? For sure, and hopefully each one of us will have a different answer to this question, and it's totally okay. And no one else but us can answer this question. For me, bringing more joy in my life is to play the pipe organ at home, cook a savory and nutritious meal in under 30 minutes, host music parties, participate in an e-scooter club, or take acting classes. Or in my relationship with food, what does it look like to redefine it? The answer to this is to have push-button appliances for making all various kinds of meals. And in my business, the answer to the questions how I go digital, it is the digitalization of the entire customer journey for my services and as of now, the customer journey to my products. As you explore the question, what does it look like? You may find that you need to put several entries in different quadrants for any given objective. That's okay. So here is what you need to do next. If you have a quantitative objective, please make it in Twitter version and make sure that it also has the by when component. Without the by when component, it's just a pie in the sky someday but not today kind of goal. If you have a qualitative objective, please put a Twitter version of all its components in their corresponding quadrants. After you complete this activity, we will continue with you beginning to sketch your own change map. If you don't finish on time, don't worry, you can continue after the workshop ends. This is just to get you started. Please take 2 minutes to formulate your change objective as either a quantitative or a qualitative one. Please begin now. We are now at step number 3, where you begin to sketch your Wayz4Change map. By now you have formulated in Twitter short form your quantitative or qualitative objectives and placed them in their proper quadrants. Before sketching the Wayz4Change map, you will need to ask yourself more questions. You may start to realize that any transformation and any change is the result of asking yourself some powerful questions. Inquiry is the basis for transformation. Let's see where exploring each quadrant will lead us to. Let's start with the eliminate quadrant. The questions you want to ask yourself when considering a change are: if the change I want is realized, what will become irrelevant? Or what will I have to give up or quit? Or what will I leave behind? Or what will I put a stop to? For the reduce quadrant, the questions you want to ask yourself are: if the change I want is realized, what will matter less? In what I will invest less energy, talent, time, money, and resources? What pains I get to reduce? For the race quadrant, the questions you want to ask yourself are: if the change I want is realized, what will matter more? In what I will invest more energy, talent, time, money, and resources? And finally, for the create quadrant, the questions you want to ask yourself are: if the change I want is realized, what will I need to redefine, reinvent, or create? What will be new? What will I start? Next, you will have the opportunity to ask yourself and answer these key questions for your change. Please make the answers to your questions short, couple of words, and bullet list them in each quadrant. Please, no essays or editorials or explanations. We will take 4 minutes for this activity. Wow, quite a journey packed in a short time. Hopefully this is like a good palinka or a ristretto. We enter the end part of the workshop, and before we land, I would like to bring up a key design principle for Wayz4Change that makes it both simple and powerful. A one more thing kind of thing, but it's a bit heady. The magic of Wayz4Change is in the recursive application, from the first pass, when the objectives are fuzzy, all the way down to the crisp and actionable map of change. A little bit on recursion. How do you get to any page number in a book super fast? Let's say you want to get to page 73 of an 800-page book. How can you get to it in the fastest way? Take a short breath to think about it. The answer is through a recursive algorithm. First, open the book in half and select the half where the page number you are looking for is. Then take that half and split it in half and apply the same principle until you get to the desired page. This is what recursion looks like. In a book of 800 pages, I got to page 73 in 8 rounds. In the same way, you can apply Wayz4Change first to map out the kind of changes you want to make, then zoom in and commit to one and apply Wayz4Change to it to create the 4-quadrant map. And then go deeper and apply Wayz4Change on each item in every quadrant until clear objectives that put you naturally in action emerge. You may think that there is no resemblance between the book recursion and your change recursion. But think again. What makes possible the algorithm for the book is that the pages are numbered in a predictable manner. But just like the pages in a book, we organize our life in a predictable manner around purpose and cost. We write the book of our lives with each action that we take or don't take. If redefining lifestyle is an initial objective, after applying the first round of Wayz4Change, you will see that it's actually composed of 3 independent areas around sleep, eating, and physical movement. Then you can recursively apply Wayz4Change to each area. What will emerge is a unique strategy for each area with its own change map. The sleep strategy will not work for the eating strategy, and so on. So 3 independent change maps are needed, one for each area. One for sleep, one for nutrition, and one for physical movement. Then, for each key objective, you can apply Wayz4Change recursively to come up with the key elements for change that you put in the 4 quadrants. And you can continue doing so with each element from a given quadrant until the items in each quadrant are clear and put you naturally in action. Let's consider business objectives like to have profitable growth, or to redefine the business and/or the business model, or to redefine the portfolio, the market, the production. Each one of these requires its own map. You may notice that once profitable growth is realized, all the other ones may fall into place. In my case, digitalization has led to the redefinition of my business and business model. I went from delivering expertise by the hour or by the day to creating virtual products that clients can use autonomously. I moved from being a facilitator to being an architect of knowledge transfer processes. All of this came after the recursive applications of Wayz4Change on my business objectives. As you go 1, 2, or even 3 levels down, you will notice that it will require some deep thinking from you, and that the architecture for your change may suddenly look and feel complex. Well, it is. Not so much complex, but having to consider the 5 key elements that make for viable change strategies, the start and ending points, the map, the route, and the GPS, you have to do the work. But if you don't do this thinking, who will? And you know, the alternative is always available, and quantum mechanics works. Still, you may choose to make changes as you go without a clear strategy from the start. Definitely, it is easier and more convenient in the short term, but you will pay a heavy price at the end, when the change doesn't happen and you need to change your strategy or just give up on it. Once you made your Wayz4Change map, how do you use it? How do you communicate it? Start from the key goal as being achieved. Then go through each of the 4 quadrants to unveil the key reasons for change, the key utilities that inspired you to make the change, and the key obstacles that you made irrelevant. In my case, once I digitalized my business, I eliminated the travel time, the in-person facilitation, managing clients' content during facilitation. I eliminated the time to prepare post-workshop documents and the client's costs with workshop organization. And I stopped doing manual business operations throughout the customer journey, from scheduling, offering, contracting, delivery, till the end of the consulting cycle. At Reduce, I reduced the duration of the programs and my stage time and the overall cost of my programs. At Raise, I increased the hourly and daily fees by 50% and I intensified my role as a coach and mentor. And at Create, I redefined my role as a consultant from being the key dispenser of expertise to being the architect of knowledge transfer processes. I redefined the business model to include subscription revenues and paid digital content, and I have digitalized and automated the customer journey for my services from purchase, delivery, use until the end of the consulting cycle. You will get better at this after you do a few Wayz4Change maps. Where can you apply Wayz4Change? In strategic communication, for compliance to stop-start types of actions that have to be crystal clear, free of jargon, and made into simple and actionable language that everyone understands. If you are a coach, it is a revealer and accelerator of clarity that shows the essence of the change desired by your clients and reduces the time to formulation of strategy by making irrelevant the complexities of your client's situation. If you are a consultant, you can apply Wayz4Change in your consulting. Any desired change or strategic move clients want can be modeled in Wayz4Change with instant insights for your clients and for you as a consultant. If you are an entrepreneur or a business owner, you can visualize at a glance today's strategy for change and can instantly assess whether it is getting the company in the right direction or not, or how to stay on course or how to get back on it. If you are an investor, it makes pitching a whole lot easier. In business, you can do a quick portfolio check. Here is an example of what insights the inquiry for the Eliminate quadrant could bring to you by asking this question. Which products and services from our current portfolio have high costs and bring in small revenues and profits? In leadership, in what actions and/or activities do managers and employees invest their energy and talent without increasing their individual performance or the performance of the team? And so on, going through the inquiries of each other quadrant: Reduce, Raise, and Create. If you are a member of the board, Wayz4Change helps you take strategic decisions. You can explore questions from the Create and Eliminate quadrants like: what are the trends that are shaping our industry that we are ignoring today? What do we need to give up? What becomes irrelevant? In conflict management, if each party creates its own Wayz4Change, they can see the common elements of convergence and divergence that they can make disappear by creating new possibilities that are inspiring to both parties. It can be used even in eliminating the so-called resistance to change by creating new utilities. What is missing that could make a difference here? What new possibilities or utilities can counteract the resistance? What should we focus more on or less? What should we give up? Even in the area of meetings, Wayz4Change can redefine the meeting minutes, group-level decisions, policies, and individual actions. Also, action plans can be created in the model Stop or Start. Many of these can be applied in personal life also, especially when making strategic decisions about the future, like where to. Now we are in the last stretch as we are approaching the end of the workshop. I will take the next couple of minutes to bring your attention to a key factor of any change map: balance. Balance and viability of change are correlated. First, a little bit of context on balance. Balanced Wayz4Change maps are grounded in reality and more likely to happen. Balance is found on the diagonals of the map or are evenly distributed in all four quadrants. I'll bring back quantum mechanics. There are four quadrants, each with two states: the on state or 1, where you have content in, and the off state or 0 for the quadrant that is empty. Given this, there are a total of 16 possible combinations of the states of the four quadrants. Of these, only 3 are balanced and viable. Actually 4, but the fourth one is an odd one when there is nothing to change in any quadrants. There are 3 now obvious: the balanced diagonals eliminate, create or reduce, raise, and the 4 quadrants. So in this model, the chances to get a viable strategy for change is of 3 in 16, which is 19%. So Pareto appears to be working here too. Before we end, one more thing on balance. If hung from the middle point, will your strategy be in equilibrium? In my own experience and from my interactions and work with hundreds of individuals, business owners and managers, most change strategies are lopsided or out of balance. And guess, which one is the favorite? If you chose the raise lob, you're right. Most strategies focus on, in the next period we want more of this or more of that, or less of something like cost, or simply just want more with less, which is impossible without eliminating costs and barriers and or creating value. Others, more confident, believe they created something, but is that something new for the industry or just to the company? Is it something really new, pioneering? Is it bringing a leap in value? If so, then create is the rightful place to put it in. But most often than not, what is put in create is more of something and belongs to the raise quadrant. Others focus on or invest in only one lob, either more revenue and profit or less cost, which neither leads to high profitable growth nor are they sustainable. Balance is achieved when you eliminate and reduce pains and useless and or high cost functionalities and raise and create a leap in value. Viable strategies have balanced diagonals and the best choices have eliminate in all of them. Let's pause for a moment and take a look at your work you did here today. Is your strategy for change balanced? It may be worth exploring why it is or why it isn't. Some of you may be wondering, what is the Wayz4Change for Wayz4Change? Wayz4Change eliminates or makes irrelevant blocking issues through innovation. It makes irrelevant blind spots or blind angles because it makes you look deep and wide at the change. It definitely eliminates unessential details. It reduces complexity and the time it takes to formulate the change. Wayz4Change raises focus and attention on what matters and makes it easy to communicate the change. It creates at a glance 3-in-1, the map for change, the route, and the GPS. It brings authenticity and realism in your relationship to change and offers you a full studio to design your change. It helps you create and achieve a realistic action plan, and you can instantly validate any change strategy. And finally, it brings autonomy in your life and in the life of others. What about doing the Wayz4Change process on your own? One of my passions is to bring autonomy in my life and in others' life. So here it goes. First, start by drawing a rough change objectives map. Then select the one change you are really committed to making it happen, and create a new map for that objective alone. Then, for each item in the 4 quadrants, apply recursively Wayz4Change until actionable objectives emerge. Please note that when you get to actions, these are only stop or start. There is no more or less of some action. And lastly, you'll be able to book one-on-one coaching sessions with me to accelerate the design and implementation of your Wayz4Change. I hope this workshop has been valuable to you. Thank you for your time and attention. Let's stay in touch. Join the LinkedIn group. I'm one click away. All the best and stay safe.